Okay now. 2 seconds in there. Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Well, thank you for coming tonight. My name's John Mon. I'm the convener of Mull Community Council. I'd like to thank the candidates for making a big effort to be here tonight. We have Amanda Hampsey from the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party. We have Hamish Maxwell from the Scottish Labour Party. Alan Reid from the Scottish Liberal Democrats. And Brendan O'Hara from the Scottish National Party. We have apologies from Melanie Hurst from Reform, who's unwell. She's just out of hospital and she's asked me to read out a statement later on. Thanks to the Craigmere Hall Committee for putting the catering on for us. Just make yourself aware there's a fire exit here. You can go out the door you came in or up the stairs, up the back, up the alleyway and out the back door there. We'll take a short break at 8 for a cup of tea and we'll aim to finish at 8:45. The event's being live streamed on the Mull Community Council Facebook page and then it's being recorded and that recording will stay on the page. So I could ask you if you need to use your phone, do it on 4G rather than on the Whitehall Wi-Fi just in case. If I'm taking questions from the room, I won't call you by your name just in case you don't want to be named, but feel free to give your name before you give the question. So I'll give each candidate 2 minutes for an opening statement and they've drawn lots to determine the order. And we sent one question to all the candidates which we'll let them answer first after their opening statements. And then we'll take questions from the floor. If you could keep your answers brief and look at Emily with the red and yellow cards. Okay, Amanda, if you want to do your opening statement, please.
Thanks. I don't know your question. I didn't receive
No, just your opening statement. You didn't receive a question?
Don't got a question. So let me know what the question is if you can answer.
Yeah, okay, I emailed them out, so...
Yeah. Hi there, good evening. My name's Amanda Hampsey. I'm your Scottish Conservative and Unionist candidate for this upcoming general election.
A bit closer on a minute.
Closer. Our girl boots and... Yeah, it's on.
I know the other one.
That one?
That's it.
Is that us?
That's
Do
you.
you want me to start again?
Yeah, go for it.
Did I get my full 2 minutes still?
Yeah.
Do I have to speak faster?
No.
There we go, working now. My name's Amanda Hampsey. I'm your Scottish Conservative and Unionist candidate for this upcoming general election. Argyll Butte in South Lochaber is very much home to me, having lived here all my life. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected as this area's MP on July 4th, then I will be a strong voice for issues that affect my family as much as affect you and yours. I've already had the privilege over the past couple of years in representing Oban South and the Isles within Argyll Butte Council, which also includes Mull. So I'm very fortunate to already represent this area in some sense. During that period, I've delivered many positive outcomes for local people, such as championing the purchase of Kintyre Care Centre, funding and refurbishment for the implementation of modernisation in Tigarua and Tyree, and significant investments towards care both in the Isle of Bute and also in the Isle of Mull. I've worked closely with the UK Government already to help secure £20 million of levelling up funding, which is going directly to Argyll and Bute Council, and with another £20 million earmarked for a funding boost also. During this campaign, I've so far been to over 12,000 doorsteps. And for me, it's about listening to local people, listening to their priorities, and making sure that we are focused on delivering for local people and local places. I will pass on to Hamish and I'll close down at that. But thank you very much for attending this evening and for taking the time to listen. It really is much appreciated. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Hamish Maxwell, and I'm delighted to be Scottish Labour's Westminster candidate in the beautiful Argyll, Bute and South Lochaber. I spent much of my childhood in social housing, followed by law school, which I paid for partly by labouring on building sites, and you might not be able to tell it looking at these hands today, but they've carried their fair share of bricks in their time. I've got a very strong personal connection with the constituency. I was an officer in the Navy based at Faslane as a leader in ships and submarines, and I really enjoyed visiting the amazing communities, including Mull, during my time in the Navy. And more than that, when a submariner comes home from sea, He or she can often feel quite under the weather, tired, stressed, and living somewhere as beautiful as this with such amazing communities was really good for me, and that's why I feel like I owe this place so much. After the Navy, I got a scholarship to an MBA, and now I work in Scottish asset management. I want everyone in this constituency to have the opportunity for a better future, and that means I want stronger public services supported by a stronger and growing economy. And like so many other people, I'm feeling a little bit glum at the minute with the state of politics, but I am very, very excited by the opportunity for Scottish Labour to deliver change. And I'm not giving away any state secrets by pointing out that support for the Conservatives and the SNP has been falling. That's not the fault of my colleagues here, who I admire and like, but that is the case. And it means that a vote for Scottish Labour means that you can send more than just a message. You can send a government. Thank you very much for having me.
Right, first of all, I would want to thank Mull Community Council for organising tonight's hustings, and also thank you all for giving up a Friday evening to come along and, sorry, Thursday evening. I do know what day of the week it is, despite the fact that an election campaign really does frazzle your brain. It is definitely Thursday. When I was the MP for this area for 14 years, between 2001 and 2015, so I know the area inside out. When I was the MP, I made it very important to get out and about throughout the constituency, talking to people and taking up their concerns with government, both at Holyrood and at Westminster. I visited Mull regularly, holding surgeries, and I conducted a summer tour of the whole constituency, holding a surgery in every village in the constituency, so it was in likes of Finnefort, Benesson, Craigmuir, Salon, Tobermory and so on, and across to Iona as well. And I would do the same if I was re-elected. My campaigns led to some successes that benefited Mull. One was the island fuel duty discount, which means that fuel sold at the pumps on Mull is, the fuel duty is 5 pence a litre less than it is on the mainland. There was a long battle with the Treasury over the VAT on the Isle of Mull swimming pool, and we were successful in getting the VAT waived, which meant that the swimming pool could go ahead. So that's how I was the MP before, and if re-elected I would carry on in the same way, delivering successes for Mull.
If I stand up, do I need a microphone if I stand up? Because at 5'7", you take every opportunity you can to stand up. So this election is about ABC. It's about austerity, it's about Brexit, it's about the cost of living crisis. And how only independence, when we return as a full and equal member of the European Union, can we actually equip ourselves with the tools to tackle this crisis. Politics is about choices. Austerity was a choice. It was a choice to make the poorest pay while the rich were protected. And now we're in a stage now where it's continuing, condemning children to a life of grinding poverty and robbing the waspy women of their pension in order to continue austerity. Brexit was a choice, but it wasn't our choice. It was someone else's choice. And it has been an economic and social disaster for this constituency. Our biggest problem that we have is depopulation. We need to attract people to come and live and work and invest and raise a family in Argyll, Bute and South Lochaber. Brexit has cut the legs from under us on that one. And it is an existential crisis that we are facing as a result. And the cost of living crisis was turbocharged by the choices made by the calamitous Liz Truss administration, when your mortgages soared and your fuel bills and your energy bills skyrocketed. But it doesn't have to be this way. and with the powers of a normal, independent country, returning to the European Union where we belong, we can equip ourselves with what we need to make those real changes. So on July the 4th, say no to the ABC and vote SNP.
Thank you all. Now we'll go on to the first question. Hamish, that's you, the one we sent you. Amanda, if you could give me that paper back, please, and I'll read that out. And before I look at the other questions there, I hope not. This is a two-part question from the Amaze project. The Amaze project is the Archipelago of Mull Action for Zero Emissions. Terry Hegarty sent this. What do candidates understand about the benefits of community-led renewable energy generation? And the second part of the question, if elected to Westminster, how would each candidate address obstacles currently facing development of the new community energy schemes in this constituency? So over to you, Hamish.
Thank you very much. So the environment is one of the reasons I got into politics, because it was very, very clear to me we were in trouble. And the Conservatives and the SNP, I'm afraid to say, simply have not done enough on this important issue. The evidence is very, very clear that humans are ruining the atmosphere, making the world warmer. This has catastrophic consequences in terms of heat waves, storms, and water shortages and extinction. And we need to dislocate ourselves from global energy markets, which are volatile and painful, and the government has not done enough to shield us from that. In 2020, nationwide there were 450 community projects saving £3 million in energy bills, which was nowhere near enough. We went into a cost of living crisis linked to energy prices, and it was really, really painful. And the SNP unfortunately has missed its targets repeatedly in Holyrood. Labour has a very, very clear plan on this. We're going to set up a publicly owned company called Great British Energy. This will invest in large-scale projects, also community projects, £600 million for local authorities and £200 and £400 million in low-interest loans a year for communities to set up local infrastructure dislocated from the grid and from global crisis.
Are you okay with that time? It's a bit two-part question, a bit long.
Well, I think I'll copy Brendan. I'm an inch higher than you, Brendan, but I still feel the need to. I still feel the need to show my full height. Can you hear me okay at back? Right, that's good, much easier than using the microphone. I see community renewable generation schemes as very important. It's local communities that should be benefiting from renewable generation in their community, not just landowners and big multinational companies. So I will fully back any community that wants to go ahead and run its own renewables scheme, because I think these schemes work best when they're actually owned and run by the local community. Now, the second part of the question was, what would I do to overcome problems? I would do the same as I did when Garmony was being set up. It needed a change in legislation, and with Murray Finch, who was representing MIC, we met the Minister's Special Advisor and we got a change in the law, and that's what's needed, is to find out what the problem is, go to the Minister and get the law changed.
The UK energy market is completely broken. It is run and designed to be run for the benefit of the big, major multinational corporations. That's who it benefits. We have a private grid, and those companies benefit from that private grid. What we've seen over the years is the nationalising of debt and the privatising of profit. We need to start getting profits back into communities and back into where they belong. Because at the moment, what we're seeing is a survival of the richest. And we've got to pivot as a country away from this reliance on those massive energy companies. And that's where local energy is so important, because the money that it makes goes back into the community. And that's why I'm down as one of the lead supporters of the local energy, the local electricity bill, which has been trying to go through Parliament at the moment. We need to change our relationship with energy and the supply of energy and who benefits from it. It has to be communities, and I will continue to do everything I can to champion local energy and that local electricity bill if I'm back on July the 4th.
Just a slight change. I should have read out the Reform candidate's notice that she sent us, so I'll just do that now. Sorry. This is from Melanie Hurst, and she said, "I'm disappointed that I'm too unwell to participate this evening, especially given the strength of support I have received locally, for which I'm extremely grateful. I'm of course happy to answer any questions submitted this evening, but in the meantime, here's some I prepared earlier. Living in Oban with my family, I'm truly honoured to have been selected to run for election in Argyll, Bute and South Loch Arbor for Reform UK. I've been overwhelmed by the level of support from you, the people of Argyll and Bute and South Loch Arbor. It has far exceeded my expectations. I'm not a career politician, I'm an ordinary working class woman who cares, and that's what makes me different. I really do care. Throughout this campaign, I've been asked what I think the top issues in the area are. It's a strange question because it really doesn't matter what I think, it's what you, the people of Argyll and Bute, think. Yet we have all had enough of being told that we should think, or what we should think, or what we need our politicians, what we need by our politicians. It's time for change. I've listened and you've told me that what you need, that your priorities are access to healthcare, in particular dental and hospital services, transport, with the ferry fiasco being top of the list, affordable housing for local people and the cost of living crisis. If elected, I will listen to my constituents, taking on board your concerns and prioritising your needs, raising the profile of Argyll, Bute, South Loch Arbor and Westminster. I will work for you and not the system, lobbying Holyrood to ensure the people of Argyll, Bute and South Loch Arbor are heard loud and clear. Reform UK is the only party promising to reduce taxes to stimulate much needed growth and ease the cost of living and housing crises to deliver a much needed economic boost." Okay, thank you. On to the next question. This is from Cheryl Callow, who can't be with us tonight. What's that?
Do you want me to answer the first one?
No, we'll move down one each time.
Mine hasn't answered the first one.
Sorry, everybody. First time doing this. Thanks. Thanks,
It's all right on the night.
Just keep me on. Keep it straight. On you
Show
go,
must
son.
go on.
Do you want the microphone?
No, I don't like microphones. So for me, the community energy is something that's already been demonstrated in some sense throughout some of our communities in Argyll and Bute. For example, Tyree, they have their own wind farm, which is very successful and already pulls in money that goes towards the local community for the community benefit. For me, I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see much more of that, and indeed within the Scottish Conservatives, we would like to introduce a community energy benefit law going forward, so that there's a community share in the economic benefits of the energy that we produce, with a greater level of consultation that goes on with that, that's guaranteed a CPI-linked financial payment as well.
Amanda, they're struggling to hear you online. Can you either speak up or use the mic? There we go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Do you want me to start again, John?
Yeah, go on, you go for that.
Right, okay, I'll start again. Apologies if anybody couldn't hear me. Please feel free to shout at me if you can't. I'm happy to shout a bit louder. So for me, community energy is absolutely fundamental to our local communities. You can already see that demonstrated in the likes of Tyree right now, where they have their own wind farm, which brings huge benefits to the local area. The economic benefit of that goes directly into the local area, and I would like to see much more of that. It should be for local people to be able to benefit, especially on the likes of our rural and island areas, where they are experiencing the effects of having our, wind farms and what have you. So, for the Scottish Conservatives, what we would like to do is introduce a community energy benefit law, so that communities do share in the economic benefits. There's a greater level of consultation in bringing these forward, and also a guaranteed CPI-linked financial payment as well. So, absolutely all for going forward with that, John, and making sure that it's got full support and backing.
Okay, thank you. This next question from Cheryl Callow. What could you do from Westminster? Can you hear me all right without the mic? What can you do from Westminster to encourage the Scottish Government to improve the ferry service that's causing severe economic damage? To you, Alan.
Could we ask Mull Campus to use the microphone, please?
Yes. You can stand.
Sometimes Brendan gives good advice. The ferry service is clearly just been utterly disastrous for Mull and for all the islands. Now the question was, what can we do at Westminster? Well, any representative of the islands has a voice, and although we won't actually sit in Holyrood, I certainly will make sure that the Scottish Government hears loud and clear that the islanders, not just on Mull, but in all the other islands, are utterly fed up with the mess they've made. Now, 15 years ago, I warned the Scottish Government that if they didn't start a ferry building programme then, this is what would happen, because the ferries were reaching the end of their useful lives.
A bit further away.
Sorry?
Just hold it a wee bit further.
Okay. One thing I would be saying to them is that this division between CMAL and CalMac is simply not working. That needs to be changed. But what we need is a regular ferry building programme, and I think we also need to have a consultation about how best to run ferries, because the present system clearly isn't working.
And there's absolutely no doubt that historically things have been pretty grim, and you guys and other islanders have borne the brunt of it. What you do from Westminster is what I've been doing almost constantly, and that's writing and speaking to Scottish Government ministers and having regular meetings with CalMac. And just last month, about a fortnight before the general election, in the new part of the constituency, the ferry over from to Tobermory, we got the community together and we took the chief executive of CalMac, and on a Thursday morning we got about 100 people to come and speak to him. So there are things you can do. Alan's right, you're not in the meetings themselves. That doesn't mean you can't have a voice, and I do have a voice. But I think we should bear in mind that going forward, by the end of this year, there will be 2 brand new vessels in the water. First quarter of next year, there'll be another vessel, and by the end of 2025, there'll be a total of 6 brand new vessels. And had we not had the general election called, then the Scottish Government would have announced that there's a building programme in which 7 new small vessels will be built, and so I'm told. So they are getting things right now, but that doesn't make it any easier for those who have had to live with the mistakes of the past. I absolutely accept that.
There you go.
So I would say that's very much the absolute top thing that comes to me, both as a councillor and also as a candidate within the general election. I think everybody in this room has been affected by the state of the ferries, which has been quite frankly disastrous. If you just take Mull as an example, how many times is the freezer going to be taken away? How many times is the Alfred going to arrive? How many times are we going to have problems with the onshore facilities and trying to get the ferry in and out, which by all means the pier side is a council perspective, but the ferry's been able to actually sail. How do we operate without the ferry sailing? This is affecting people in such a broad capacity. You know, you have the local businesses are being massively affected, local people, it affects them medically. These are lifeline ferries. So for me, I would be working with all stakeholders. We need to have public consultation. We need the government to actually listen. The ferry group that's run by Joe Reid, to finish, the ferry group that's run by Joe Reid tirelessly and other members of the community, why are they not being listened to properly? There is so many people that's feeding into that, so it's about stakeholders, it's about communication, and it's also about the 20 million levelling up funding that's came in from the UK government to support the Corrin ferry onshore infrastructure as well. So the UK government is lending a hand, and I certainly would do from Westminster too.
Yeah, so as a former sailor, I understand how difficult it is to bring ships online and run them, and run maritime organisations. It is hard, but it is important, and it should be taken seriously, and I don't think it has been taken seriously for a very long time, and people here are feeling the consequences of that. They are a vital lifeline, and we shouldn't just pay lip service to that. We ought to have a very, very robust programme which recognises the seriousness at stake in terms of livelihoods, in terms of tourism, in terms of appointments, in terms of weddings. I've had people on this island in particular and elsewhere writing to me, pleading to me to make a case for this, although I suspected and was correct that it was a prominent issue, one of the first questions. Scottish Labour will build a ferry a year. That is the ambitious target, and we'll keep that up until we have all the necessary ferries online. Now, what I know about ships makes me feel really, really excited actually about the advances in technology. 10 years has led to a 50% reduction in emissions in some ship engines. So this is an opportunity too for the environment. But I want you to know that Scottish Labour takes this very, very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Brendan, please. The next question's from Helen MacDonald in Tobermory. What would you consider to be the greatest challenge to the sustainability of Mull and Iona? And if elected, what would your party do to tackle that? The greatest challenge to the sustainability of Mull and Iona.
Well, I think, well, we've talked about ferries. I think ferries are absolutely important. But I'll go back to Brexit. We need people. We need to attract young, ambitious, entrepreneurial people to come from wherever in Europe they may be, to come and live, work, raise a family here. We simply cannot allow Mull and Iona and the other islands to become a retirement home for the wealthy and the elderly. It's unsustainable. And that is simply why, from day one, and to the upset of many people, I have said that I will support anything which brings jobs and investment into this area, and I will not, as your MP, I'm not here to protect anybody's rural idyll. Now, I can understand why people want to come here and retire here, but that's unsustainable. We need young people, we need jobs, we need investment, and I will work, and have, I believe, worked tirelessly to promote that throughout Argyll and Bute, and I will continue to do that.
Thank you very much. The next question is from... I will get the hang of it. Sorry, Ellen.
So, spending time on the island and speaking with local people, absolutely the ferries is the #1 issue. I think we've covered that one already, so I'll not go over that one again. The next thing that really seems to be coming over my desk on a constant basis is affordable housing. There is local people who are not able to stay in the local area because they cannot find a home that is simply affordable to them. The SNP government failed to secure homes through its £25 million Rural Affordable Homes for Key Workers Fund. I certainly have seen many key workers, care workers, where we are not able to provide the care that's needed on the islands and rural areas, and you cannot run those services without the people. We need the affordable homes, we need people to be able to stay in islands and rural areas, and we cannot continue to see what is essentially going to end up as Highlands clearances if we do not pull ourselves together and actually start building homes.
Yes, it's, I think it's an answer with multiple parts and short answers, but I think a summary of the main issues, it is worth reiterating the transport aspect, because people do find that off-putting if they can't get to vital appointments on the mainland, if they can't make family events, and if tourism is going to suffer. So it's just worth saying that over and over again, we have to take the transportation seriously. Local businesses as well, so up and down the country, the macro picture for the economy has been putting a lot of pressure on local businesses, and Labour does have a very robust plan for getting our economy back to growth, and that will help local businesses. because their costs versus their profits are becoming so strained that more businesses are closing in Argyll and Bute than are being set up right now. Places to stay, absolutely top of the list as well. Affordable homes, it's going to require a rethink of second homes, but also a building project across the constituency and across the country, and Labour has got plans to address the planning issues as well. I realise that's a short answer, but I think it's a holistic one. Thank you.
Well, clearly ferries is, for any island, the most important issue that affects its viability. I know we've already discussed ferries, but I think this subject needs more discussion. Pleased to hear from Brendan that the Scottish Government is promising us, I think, a total of 13 new ferries. But I hope that comes to fruition, and clearly that will make a tremendous help. But that is still, we can't just say problem solved and forget all about it, because it's not just that the need to build the new ferries, it's about the way CalMac is run. And I mean, this division between CalMac that runs the ferries and CMAL that builds them, that's got to go. That if I was the MP, I will initiate a consultation on the islands, find out what you and other islanders think is the best way to run the ferry service for the future.
We'll take our questions from the room now. We'll come back to some of the questions that have been sent in later. Anybody? This man here, first hand up.
Yes, thank you. In Wales, I've got the talking St John. Do you mind if I just say, my wife is a Mull. She grew up right here in Ferries too, which was a child, and sometimes the ferry ran once a week. She said the ferries now are excellent. Anyway, that's the sign. My question is, could I ask each of the panel members to explain to me what the term "we're better together" means? Thank you.
Thank you. I remember your wife's mother well. Okay, Amanda, it's over to you first.
So for me, is this working? Oh, there we go. So for me, we absolutely are better together. We're stronger. I see us as essentially a marriage of several countries. For me, it does work. We support one another, and we ensure that we have the sustainability and the economic growth by supporting one another. For me, the division of the division of Scotland from the rest of the UK is not sustainable. There is no plan for it, and it is essentially a carrot on a stick. I do not believe that this is something that we're going to see. By all means, what we have been told is that if there is a majority of SNP MPs goes to Westminster, then we have a mandate for independence. Well, there already is a majority up until now, so why then the stalling, and what differed in the plan? We are better together, we are stronger as a union, and I absolutely fully support that.
Yeah, so I absolutely do support the union as well. My upbringing on a council estate gave me a very real sense of the value of community, because we could not have got by without my mum's friends and our neighbours. And I often think that nothing moves faster than the rumour mill through the mum's network on a council estate. If I was ever up to no good, the information got home a lot quicker than I could. The connection there, the support from my mum, the sense of community gave me an early sense of what it means to work as a team. But coming out of that estate, Labour government, with the education system we had when I was growing up, gave me opportunities. And so I felt that I needed to repay back into the state, which is why I joined the Royal Navy to defend the country. Looking forward, I think there's an opportunity for Britain to punch well above its weight, as it has done economically and socially, and we can do it again. But it's been badly run. There's been problems with government up and down the country, and I think we need to address that. We need to get back to growth, we need to get back to a fairer economy with less inequality, and we need to get back to creating opportunities for young people, and that for me gives a sense of what it means to be better together.
Working together is always much more productive than working separately. That's why I think that both Scotland and England and Wales and Northern Ireland benefit from being part of the United Kingdom. And it's also why I fought against Brexit and supported Britain staying within the European Union. Divisions within the world help nobody. Scotland contributes towards the United Kingdom, so do all its parts. And one stark fact is that because of the way the Scottish Parliament is funded through the Barnett formula, we get 25% more to spend in Scotland than happens in other parts of the United Kingdom. If Scotland left the UK, we'd lose all that money, and our health and our education well, I think some members of the audience need a reality check, because it's actually true. If we lose all that money, I would hope that Brendan would tell us where those 25% cuts in health and education in Ferries budget, how will the SNP manage that?
I'll tell you exactly where it will come from. We missed out on the first energy revolution of the 1970s with oil and gas. We're on the cusp of a second energy revolution with onshore and offshore tidal and wave power. At our peril do we miss out on this one. But Scotland can. The economic viability of Scotland is unquestionable. It absolutely is. It's a political decision. 2014, they said to us, stay and lead. This is a partnership of equals. And within weeks, everything had changed. When they had pulled the wool over your eyes and we voted narrowly to remain within the United Kingdom, everything changed. And Brexit changed it again. And let's not forget, that we are now the only part of the United Kingdom that didn't get what they voted for in Brexit. England got its Brexit, Wales got its Brexit, Northern Ireland, which voted to remain, is still part of the single market. Scotland alone lost out on Brexit and did not get what we wanted. And if this is staying and leading, if this is a partnership of equals, then I think the United Kingdom better think again. Scotland can and should, and I believe will, be independent, and we will be back in the European Union as quickly as we possibly can.
And any other questions from the floor? No, Emily, you were first, I think.
I just wanted to ask a question about the Mull Campus and the new high school. I would like each of the candidates just to put on record here that they're supportive of the new high school campus, and also let me know what they're going to do to stay in touch with the council and push this project through to fruition and to build, because at the moment it's still in consultation. So although it is the next stage, there's still a long way to go, and I just want to know how you guys are going to support us to get that built, please.
Can I just check if I stand up, am I out of view with my 6'3" height?
No, you've got a lot of height.
I think I need a leg stretch actually, yeah. Yeah, I know, I was banging my head all over the place, I think that's why I left for some reason. Okay, so in my view, education is the great enabler, it is the great equaliser. I've experienced things in life thanks to my experience of school, and I think that is a universal right to have excellent education. Great place to study for kids that can be inspiring, set a good atmosphere, but also for the people who work there. So I am absolutely in support of the campus. I've been following the Community Council's discussion on this, and I've poured through months and months and months and months of the Community Council's minutes on this. I mean, I've lost track of the number of hours I've spent reading your minutes, and I absolutely approve of the work being done. Devolved, but I certainly would use my platform to be an advocate for the campus. Great work, please keep it up. Thank you very much.
Well, I was pleased when the council voted to go ahead with the new Mull Campus, because clearly that old school couldn't go on for much longer, and refurbishing it would just be money down the drain. Definitely needed a new school. As you know, Emily, you were in correspondence with me before the council decision was made, and I spoke to several councillors. And I mean, they didn't need me to persuade them, because they already worked out from the papers and from the feedback from the Mull community that the school had to go ahead. In the future, as a member of Parliament, I would hold regular meetings with the leader of the council and the chief executive. And one of the things that I would be regularly raising at that meeting would be the progress towards the new campus. And I'm confident that it will go ahead, but if any problems did arise, I would certainly raise those at these regular meetings with the council.
I took a walk around the campus about 2 months ago, and it is a mess. It is a crumbling 1970s mess. It's unsavable, and the idea that you would pour public money into refurbishing that is an absolute non-starter. So, having seen that Helensburgh and Dunoon and Rothsay and Loch Gilphead and so many other in Campbellton have all had new schools, it's now Mull's time to have a brand new campus. And I'm really pleased that the new council administration have now progressed this on to the business case. So it's now in the pipeline. It seems to have overwhelming political support, and I see no reason why, and as soon as we possibly can, that we are coming back together to cut the ribbon on a brand new campus for Mull, because it's about time, because the old one is utterly unsavable.
So in terms of the Mull Campus, I don't think it's news to anybody that I am fully backing the Mull Campus. I have done since day one, and it will continue in the same way. The school's produced many very successful stories, and it's a school to really be proud of. They've had to make do with what they have, and the time has come to an end where they shouldn't have to make do any longer. And alas, the class will simply not work for the campus. They need a new campus. And most importantly, which hasn't been mentioned, is that campus placing must be done by thorough community consultation. It is up to the people of Mull to decide where that campus is going to be, and not to the councillors. It's the councillor's job to represent the community accurately, and to represent the community accurately, that can only be done through proper consultation. So I will be absolutely offering my full backing to the community, and also to the Mull Campus team within the council, to make sure that the work is done effectively, efficiently and as quickly as possible.
You were next there. Do you want to give your question?
Yeah, just in view that this is a Westminster elections coming up, I'd like to ask about the ongoing disaster that is within Gaza. What is each party's position on the continuation of arms sales to Israel? Do you consider that the UK arms present policy is robust?
Well, the present UK arms sales policy is most definitely not robust. I mean, what the policy should be is that licences to export arms should not be granted to any country that has an appalling human rights record. And Israel does have the right to defend itself. It was brutally attacked by Hamas, and Israel did have the right to respond. It had the right to attempt to free the hostages, but it's gone far too far in terms of human rights abuses. Its human rights record has become appalling, so I would classify it as a country that we should not be exporting arms to because of its human rights record. And as I say, that should apply to every country which has an appalling human rights record.
What happened on October the 7th was awful, absolutely awful, and it has to be condemned. But Israel's response to that atrocity goes beyond anything that could be remotely deemed as acceptable. Breaches of international humanitarian law are multiple. Using starvation as a weapon of war, cutting off food and water supplies to civilians, killing 37,000 innocent Palestinian civilians and almost 20,000 children included in that is utterly unforgivable. Netanyahu is a war criminal, yet in that Netanyahu should be before the International Criminal Court. and I was one of the first in Parliament to call for that. Similarly, I was one of the first to call for an immediate ceasefire. And also, when I asked the Business and Trade Committee, when I was guesting on their select committee, I asked the Sword Secretary about why in an area of plenty children were dying of starvation, and his answer was because of October the 7th. And he essentially gave Israel the green light to murder women and children and innocent civilians because of October the 7th. It's unforgivable. And if that is the Conservative Party, if that's the UK government, if that is what they say is acceptable in terms of selling arms to Israel, then the world is in a really, really, really dangerous place. Because if that is their criteria, there is no one they would sell weapons to.
So I would absolutely agree that things have gone way too far. It's a terrible situation, what has happened in Israel and in Palestine. And going forward, we have to have a ceasefire. The ceasefire has got to happen, and the hostages have also got to be released. We need to ensure that we continue to bring aid into Palestine. People cannot be left without food or water and medical aid. That aid has got to come in, and it should come in. And going forward, it's my belief that there should be a two-state solution between the two. It's clearly a very complex situation. It's one that we could spend all evening speaking about, but I absolutely feel for the situation that we have. I think it's a terrible situation, and I would very much like to see it come to an end for people in Israel and in Palestine.
I'm a human and I'm a father, and not a day has gone by since the 7th of October that my heart hasn't broken for what's been happening in the Middle East. I think it's appalling, and I think it needs a lot more attention from the international community than it's been getting. I do call for an immediate ceasefire. That's what I'd advocate for, and return of hostages also. And I do think we should work hard for a two-state solution. It should not be the gift of the neighbour to provide authority to have a state in the Middle East. Palestinians deserve one just as much as Israel. I think we should separate Netanyahu from the people of Israel, just as we should separate Palestinians from Hamas. They are people they are just like us, who want a peaceful life, a chance to raise a family, and to aspire to better things. So it's important to separate the two. I do think, given what we saw recently in particular, the government ought to have been questioning its policy of exporting munitions, and if there is evidence of war crimes, which we hear from the ICC, yes, we should stop exporting arms. And the final point I'd make is, I studied international law at university, and my view on peace internationally is a proper, robust system of international law. And it was the UK, after World War II, that spearheaded the international legal system, and we've lost our way the last 5 years because our country has been focusing inward. We have to get back to facing outward and support international law to prevent conflict. Thank you.
Okay, another question from the room? The gentleman here.
Thank you very much. My name's Doug Fontaine. What I'd like to ask every one of the candidates is this. The UK apparently is the 6th richest nation in the world. Okay? How come we've got such poverty? How come we've got a £2.7 trillion national debt? How come Norway has got $1.4 trillion US to invest in its future? And what benefit does Scotland have remaining in the UK? Thank you.
Thank you. It kind of goes back to where I started right at the beginning about political choices. This is all about choice. Poverty in countries like the UK, rich countries, it's not an accident. It's by design. People are deliberately made poor because of political choices. Political choices which protect the wealthy, which make the wealthy wealthier, and they play it on the backs of the poor. And that's where we are with the UK. And whether it's a two-child benefit cap, or whether it's robbing the WASPy women of what they're entitled to, that's what they're doing. This isn't an accident. And so political choices have been made over decades in the United Kingdom. And what they do is they tell people who are just have enough that the biggest threat to them is the people just below them, when in actual fact the people above them are the biggest threat. And so that's where the choices are. And I don't think the United Kingdom is savable. I don't think any government is going to change that. And that's, for me, one of the drivers of why I'm so passionately a believer in independence, because we've got to start again, because this current system is irreparable.
So I think the first thing we have to consider when we're talking about poverty is that the percentage of poverty for children has remained stable since the SNP came into government in 2007. That has not bettered. For me, we do have to invest in our local communities. We have to make sure that people are looked after. That also takes into consideration, the likes of the support that's going and funding that's going into our local governments, which is massively underfunded. Indeed, Argyll and Bute Council over the past few years received £100 million less than what it had done previously. There is the knock-on effects with the HSCP, with your health services. That takes in your social care, your care for the elderly, your care for children. These services have got to be properly funded, they've got to be sustainable, and they have got to be supported by the Scottish Government, who did have the money to send to local governments, but they chose not to. It's not okay with me to slash the budgets on health and social care. Am I finished? Slash the budgets on health and social care, slash the budgets on our children's education to allow them the education to be able to provide for themselves going forward, be successful and to feed into the local economy. What we have to do is make sure that Scotland is properly funded, and the SNP government did receive enough money to do so from the UK government.
We have an absolutely amazing economic platform to work with. The opportunity for a fairer, greener economy in this country is outstanding. We're an island in the wet and windy North Atlantic with a 65 million person population, yet we are the 6th largest economy in the world. This is absolutely outstanding as an opportunity if it's led properly, and this is the problem, it's not being led properly from Westminster or Holyrood. The last few years, household bills have gone up nearly £5,000 as a result of the inability of the government to dislocate us from global supplies. We have 240,000 children living in poverty in Scotland. This is a consequence of a lack of leadership. The Labour Party is the party of the working people. It was set up to stop the consequences of industry from exploiting people. Our policies are about growth, about a fairer economy, they're about removing planning restrictions, and they're about investing in everybody so that everybody gets the chance to live up to their potential. That is what I believe and what I will argue for. Thank you.
Yes, Hamish, that was a good pitch you put there, but it does look as if the Labour Party is going to have a great opportunity to reform the British Constitution. Why do you keep supporting a voting system that keeps a minority called the Conservatives in power for so long? What we get is short periods of Labour government followed by long periods of Conservative government, and the Conservatives just operate for the benefit of big business. Why don't you take the opportunity, Hamish, to change the voting system to a fair voting system that would mean that a minority called the Conservatives could never again gain power on their own? Now, I believe in a mixed economy, but the way the present economy is run, it's far too much for the benefit of big business. We need to put higher taxes on big business, reverse the Conservative cuts and tax to the banks, tax the big social media giants, tax share buyback schemes, and use the money that we get from taxing the big business to improve home insulation, better housing, and the NHS.
Okay, thank you everybody. That's 5-2, so we'll take a 10-minute comfort break. If you can be back here at 5 past and we'll get going again. Just remember the live streams. Do you think it's right that expats have a vote in the general election, and especially now that the government are allowing people, no, that's not getting that. And what are these expats putting into the UK coffers? So do they have a right to vote in the general election? What do you think of that? And that first goes to Amanda, please.
That's it, right?
Both switches. One up and one to the right.
Centre?
No.
That's it?
That's you.
But you've done already. For me, I think that your right to vote is a democratic right. It's a right that everybody should exercise. I think it's a right that people within this country who are living in this country and working in this country should have a right to. I can understand both sides of this argument on this one, where some people may be expats, you're going to have people that are living in other countries, maybe they have the desire to come back to this country, they wish to feed into it, but primarily I would say that people who are living in this country should have the right to vote on who is governing them within this country.
I made a promise to myself on the way up here that if I didn't have a especially strong view on a particular issue, that I wouldn't pretend I did. I'm conflicted, so I see both sides, and that's something I probably need to spend more time thinking about. People with a personal, passionate interest in the future of this country understandably want to have their individual right in defining the future. I get that. But there also needs to be a measure of what is that person's stake in the country. Are they committed? Are they integrated into the system? And how do you define membership of the society? So it's one I'd have to think more about. I recognise it can divide opinion, and it's something I'd be willing to listen to people's opinions on. Thank you.
Yeah, I think they should have the right to vote, but what I object to is that expats get to vote in the constituency where in Britain they last lived. That means that the person who is representing Argyll and Bute is not simply elected by the people who live here, the people who read the candidates' leaflets, the people who can talk to the candidate, people like yourselves that have come along tonight. It means that people in other parts of the world are influencing who is going to be elected for Argyll and Bute. What I would prefer is the system that many other countries have, where there is a constituency for expats, and the expats can all vote to elect a representative. I think that's a much fairer way than allowing them to influence who is going to represent any one particular constituency.
In brief, no, absolutely not. They have abdicated, they're gone, they're making a life somewhere else. I think the idea that someone who has left these shores to go and set up home elsewhere should then have a say in how this country is governed from abroad is an absolute nonsense. And I think it's as cynical as voter ID was. It was an attempt by the Conservatives to look for a constituency where they thought they might get some extra support from. And so I think what I would rather see the franchise we have currently extended to include people, everyone who lives here, who works here, who contributes here, regardless of where they came from. So if you choose to leave, you should have the vote. But if you choose to come, you should immediately get the vote.
Thank you. There's one more question that was sent in advance, so we'll get that out of the way before going back to the floor. What would your parties do to advance gender self-ID and how single-sex spaces will be protected? And I'll give that to Hamish first, please.
So I'm painfully aware when discussing this issue, I am a straight man, and my perspectives on this are not as close to some of the very personal and poignant issues that people experience on this topic. I have always believed in an individual's right to live the life that they feel represents them as a person, and I am absolutely against any form of bigotry or persecution because of someone's life choices. But I also know that everybody, regardless of the topic we're talking about, when you have rights, there are also responsibilities, and the law exists as a framework to balance those rights of individuals in a particular issue. I think, given how fractious this topic has been, I don't think it has been resolved clearly yet. I think that allowing a person to identify doesn't automatically mean you negate the importance of single-sex spaces. From my perspective, which is limited, I don't see very obvious day-to-day faults with the Equality Act, but I understand that there are arguments on both sides for revisiting it. So it's a conversation that I'm going to participate in. I would see my role as being a facilitator. I'm not going to lecture people. I'm going to try and find a way to build bridges and find common ground. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like Hamish, I'm a straight man, so I come to it with one set of life experiences. But I can understand that that women want and need single-sex spaces. Now, the present Equality Act says that it is the manager of the facility does have the right to only admit to the facility, can decide only to admit to the facility people who were born with a certain gender, and is allowed to exclude people who transitioned to another gender. That's in the Equality Act, and even if the Gender Recognition Act had been through the Scottish Parliament, even if that got royal assent and become law, that still part of the Equality Act would still be there. And I think that's right, because it does allow women to have single-sex spaces as long as depending on what the manager of the facility, whether it be a beauty salon, decides. So I think that right should remain for the manager of the facility to only include people who were born in a certain gender.
I mean, of course, this is an issue which is totally devolved. I think in terms of Westminster, where we should be looking at is the use of the UK government's Section 35 order to overrule the legislation that went through the Scottish Parliament. The GRR was passed by a huge majority within the Scottish Parliament. MSPs from every party supported it. Unfortunately, it's become one of the most toxic debates that I have ever encountered, and any space that there was for reason and nuance seems to have completely disappeared. And I think it's absolutely heartbreaking that an already tiny, vulnerable and marginalised community are being used as a political football by so many people to score political points. So there isn't an awful lot anyone can do from Westminster other than look at the broader principle of how the UK government uses Section 35s to prevent legislation going through the Scottish Parliament. But I think that what we've learned from this is that if we're going to do something like this, we do it properly, we do it thoughtfully, and we do it with the maximum care for those who will be most affected. And if we're going to take something from the ashes of this, then I hope it is that learning experience, because it's been pretty hideous all round.
Thank you. Next question from the audience. Amanda. It's not that. You know it's not that.
Oh, it's fine. So, difficult subject by all means. It's certainly been a very conflicting subject across the political parties. My view is that there are two sexes. You have a man and you have a woman. The meaning of a woman is an adult human female. When it comes to the single-sex spaces, that's where lies our problem. So, for example, the protection of women and girls. That has absolutely got to happen. You cannot have a majority of people who are potentially put at risk for a very small minority. Now, by all means, I have nothing against anybody of any sexual persuasion whatsoever. Likewise with people who are trans. There is some very genuine people out there, but unfortunately that has been utilised and weaponised for people who are predators. We cannot put women and girls at risk, but likewise, we also shouldn't have the men in an uncomfortable position. Men should be allowed to go into bathrooms, to go into single-sex spaces that are non-single-sex spaces, and they shouldn't have to feel that they are intimidating women or that they are making them feel uncomfortable. They shouldn't have to wait to use the bathroom. Some of these men may have bladder issues, incontinence issues, they may have stoma bags. They have a right to use the bathroom too, and they shouldn't have to use the bathroom and wait outside for the women to finish because they want to do the gentlemanly thing and they want to protect the women and girls. That's how it should be. It works as it is, and I do not think that there should be any change to that. But by all means, I do not have anything against anybody other than predators. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Amanda. I've got a sheet so I don't do that. It's not working. Okay. Next question from the audience, please. Oh, you were very fast at the back there.
This is a Westminster election. Do you have a policy you want to see passed, or what are your policy goals for this Parliament?
Well, the biggest issue that faces us all is global warming. That's an existential threat to the human race. So that has to be the main issue that we'd want to tackle in the next Parliament. We simply, the Liberal Democrats, have a goal of reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2045. We absolutely have to reach that goal. But we have to reach that goal in a way that is just for everybody. It means that there is fuel poverty, a great deal of fuel poverty in this country. So when we are reducing carbon emissions, we have to insulate, we have to have grants for insulating houses for people with low incomes. So that as well as using less carbon, we are not doing that at the expense of making people poor. And another group that we have to be careful of is people who work in the fossil fuel industry. We have to retrain them in the industries of the future. The future is green, and the countries which will succeed will be the countries that harness green technology.
There's probably three answers. Globally, Alan's absolutely right, climate change. We can never, ever get away from the trajectory that we are on is going to kill us all and will kill the planet. And no matter where we are, that's got to be our overarching concern. In terms of the UK, I'll repeat it again, Brexit. Brexit is stifling everything. We've heard an awful lot tonight about growing the economy. How do you grow an economy when you've cut yourself off from your biggest market? How do you grow an economy when there are 500 million people that you've cut yourself off from? You cannot do it. It'd be like the captain of the Titanic having hit the iceberg, saying to the passengers, I think we're going to be all right, bear with me. It's not going to happen. Brexit is an economic catastrophe and nothing can improve until it's gone. And in terms of Argyll, Bute, South Lochaber, repopulation. It's about getting people to come here and make our communities strong, viable and sustainable. Because if we don't have that, then we do become that retirement home for the wealthy and the elderly, which is no future for anybody.
Thank you, Greg.
So for me, I've always said that my priorities are local people, local places, and their priorities. As politicians, we are there to serve the public. We're not there to decide on the direction. We're there to answer to the people who we represent. What I am hearing on the doorsteps is the things that I will represent. So that is things such as, we're speaking about the economy. You certainly can't grow a rural or island economy when the ferries don't run. There's no economy at all when the ferries stop running and things grind to a halt. We need to try to push things forward to make sure that we are tackling depopulation. We need to make sure that we have sustainable and affordable housing for people. We need to fix our ferries. We need to make sure that the Rest and Be Thankful has a clear plan going forward to try to make sure that is operating fully, and certainly not in the way that it has been. We have to make sure that we cover the entire plethora that comes from our local people. So for me, local people, local places, their priorities, that's how I've always operated, and that's how I would operate going forward. Like I said, I have spoken to over 12,000 people in the doorsteps. I have a very good idea as to what the local people would want. That's the plan going forward. Deliver for local people.
So I recognise Brenda's important question, which is how do you grow the economy? It's a question that the SNP and Conservatives have been implicitly asking during their inability to do so in Scotland and across the UK. 70% of people in this country, in Scotland, believe that for the taxes they pay, they don't get value for money from the government in Holyrood. But likewise, nearly £5,000 extra on people's bills because of the Conservatives over the last 3 years. So two governments have not been growing the economy. My answer to the question is linked to our policy on Great British Energy, which is one of the reasons that I'm standing as a candidate for Labour. I lie awake at night worrying about the environment, what's going to happen to the place we live and the type of world we're giving to my daughters. That really, really worries me, but it can be an opportunity. If we create a company that secures our supply chains, considering China's hoovering them up, but also organises distribution with large projects and facilitates 2,000 community projects, I think we turn a potential disaster into an opportunity which Scotland can lead. Thank you.
You happy with your answers there? Thank you. There you go.
Question for Alan. I'm sorry about, by the way, laughing at the finance. Yeah, I was a bit rude there. But I'll take it from there. I've read your literature, your complaints about the NHS. I would like to know just how you're going to finance the improvements that you want to make the NHS without increasing taxation. Thank you.
Okay, Alan, you said written the answer to that?
Well, we would increase taxation, but it would be taxation on big business. I mean, the Conservatives have been letting big business away with billions of pounds unnecessarily. For example, we would reverse the Conservatives' tax cuts for the big banks. We would increase from 2% to 6% the digital services tax on the social media and the big tech companies. We would have a serious, not the pretend windfall tax of the present government, we would have a serious windfall tax on the profits of the oil and gas companies. We would be taxing luxury flights. So, and there's a whole list of, I see the yellow cards up, there's a whole list of other taxes we're going to levy on big business. And we would use that money for a lot of things, but the biggest beneficiary would be the NHS.
Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that?
Just briefly, to give me an opportunity, something I wanted to say for a couple of minutes. The link between poverty and health, it's there. It's inexplicable. You cannot deny that it's there. And it's what we talked about earlier on about political choices. And with a limited and shrinking budget, the Scottish Government have chosen to invest in trying to lift children out of poverty. And it's hugely important. And we don't talk enough about it. But please look at the Scottish Child Payment.
It is incredibly important. And let me do a quote about the Scottish Child Payment from Professor Danny Dorling, who said the Scottish Child Payment is a single policy intervention that has created the largest fall in child poverty anywhere in Europe for at least 40 years. So that's something that the Scottish Government is doing right now. And if we can lift children out of poverty at the very start of their lives, then perhaps going forward, a lot of those issues and those health-related things that we have to deal with later on would be gone. And it's about poverty, and that link between poverty and health. We've got to break it.
Well, I would absolutely endorse Brendan's comments. As I said, there is a huge link between poverty and certainly the underfunding of our HSCPs. Indeed, what you have within this evolved issue is HSCPs right across the entirety of Scotland who are massively underfunded by the Scottish Government as it is. The funding formulas do not work in favour of all areas, and it should work in favour of all areas. As Conservatives, it's our belief that 12% of the NHS budget should be bringing forth 1,000 extra GPs. Right now what we are seeing is a multitude of locum doctors across the area, which by all means is very much needed to make sure that those services are provided. But the money has to be managed effectively and efficiently to make sure that our services are running properly. And there should be more conversations on the ground, because let me tell you, from the time that I was the policy lead for health and social care, that was my prime task, and the way that I operated within the HSCP was that you have got to speak to the staff. The answers are on the ground as to how things work efficiently and effectively. It's about the consultation and making sure that you're involving all stakeholders going properly and running your services in a way that actually works.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the other half of the question, right? So policies are just a wish list unless you can pay for them. And raising taxes right now when people are nearly 20% worse off than they were 5 years ago would be an additional level of pain. So for the benefit of those who want to see the detail and Labour's plans for our cash injection to the NHS, we've been very careful at the back of our manifesto to have 4 pages which have a table of spend and source of revenue, because we have to be able to give the country confidence that this is not just a wish list, this can be paid for. So as part of the overall solution, we need more appointments in the NHS, and the Westminster budget will fund 160,000 extra appointments in Scotland. But if you want to see where that comes from, this table breaks it down. So familiar with our plan for the non-dom tax, I suspect that's been in the news a lot. There's also VAT on private schools. There's revenue from what they call carried interest in a certain sorts of investing. So in short, that adds up to £7 billion. And we very, very carefully set out exactly what we're spending that on. So doctors, nurses, more appointments, new technology, new diagnostics machinery to get cancer diagnostics, the time for that, get that reduced. So hopefully that's a clear way for you to see that, and I would encourage anyone to have a look at the back of our manifesto if they've not already.
I think that the nuclear industry is holding us back. I can see why a government would want it. If you look at Dounreay, what it took 20 years to build, it operated for 40 years and we take it. I think we're in 50 years of trying to decommission it. So I can see why they would want to have this cheap source of energy, but you cannot play fast and loose with the nuclear industry. And on Sunday, I went onto the National Grid app, and in the north of Scotland, every kilowatt we were using was produced by renewable energy. Wind power was producing every single thing that we were using in the north of Scotland. And that's our future. Our future is in green, renewable technology. And I think we're being held back because governments in Westminster are thrilled to the nuclear industry. We've got to get away from that, I think, as quickly as possible. And as I said earlier on, there's a green revolution on our doorstep. And we missed the first one, let's not miss the second one, because that is our future, and that's our children and our grandchildren's future as well.
So when it comes to energy in Scotland, I back our energy sources. I back our nuclear energy, I back our oil and gas industry, and I also back our green energy. Whether that be our wind farms, whether it be looking into how we operate tidal energy as well. I think we need to try to move forward to a just transition, but we can't just turn the taps off on anything. We're not in a position to do that, and it's certainly not green or economical for us to be shipping in our energy from other countries. Utilise our own energy, and that for me is the correct way to do things and move towards a just transition.
Yeah, totally agree with the idea that we absolutely have to move towards a green and renewable future, and that is the policy of the Labour Party. There needs to be a phased transition. Turning off oil and gas overnight and nuclear overnight would have disastrous consequences. It's unfortunate, but that is the case. So what it requires then is investment and leadership in the green revolution. And I would argue that the policies I've summarised this evening on our plan for Great British Energy are the best proposition of all of the parties on the ballot paper for taking proper leadership in a tough issue, creating the solution, investing in the solution, and thereby cutting our emissions, cutting bills, and increasing wages. Right, so that's really, really important. Long term, a future without oil and gas and uranium power plants, sure, that ought to be the long-term aim, but we can't turn them off overnight.
Well, we're fortunate in Scotland that we have great potential from renewables. So we don't need nuclear power plants in Scotland. That's absolutely clear. We can generate all our electricity from renewables. England is not in such a favourable position though, and I know that there are nuclear power plants in development in England. I don't know the stage of development, but I suspect they are all tied up with penalty clauses that if the incoming government was to cancel them, it would probably cost more to cancel than to go ahead. Companies only sign contracts on that basis. They don't want to be caught out when government changes. So I'm not giving any commitment to vote against not going ahead with nuclear plants in England that are already, where contracts have already been signed. But certainly as far as Scotland's concerned, there's absolutely no need for nuclear power.
Thank you. We're almost out of time, so we'll just take a couple more from the room and that'll be it. So you first then.
And a related question. What is the point of GB Energy, and is it a trick to headquarter it in Scotland, and who really benefits? Who will really benefit, I should say?
Yeah, okay, thank you for that question, because if there's any doubt, I want to be really, really clear on our intentions with this. Like, this is not smoke and mirrors. We have a very, very deliberate purpose for GB Energy. So by setting up a publicly owned company, it means society as a whole gets the benefit. Scotland is an amazing place to base it. We've talked already at length about the renewables potential here. So if you think about Argyll and Bute, the potential for more wind, for more wave and more hydro, and a population who could be reskilled, I think this could be a global leader in the production of larger energy production by renewables, but also community-led. So again, it comes back to this 2,000 investment in 2,000 local community-owned projects. So the point is, we want everyone to benefit, make Scotland a leader, the UK benefits from cheaper bills, our emissions come down, we get to export our technology and our expertise, and communities share in the profit. If you are the site of production of the electricity, you ought to have cheaper bills. So very, very clear, this is a society-targeted initiative that should benefit everybody. But thank you for the question.
Keep it tight, please, everybody.
Well, we don't need a national energy company. I believe in local control, and what I would want to see would be investment in community energy companies, where the community owns and runs the renewable facility, and the benefits go to the local community. That's what we need, not national energy companies.
I have got my concerns about GB Energy. I don't quite know what it is. As far as I can see, it won't own anything, it won't produce anything, it won't sell anything. It seems to be a little more than an investment arm or an investment vehicle for private capital, which the big guys, as they always do, will swallow up. It won't be able to set prices, and therefore it won't be able to bring your bills down, because it'll still be the market which will dictate, and as long as fossil fuel is in that market, then the price will be dictated by fossil fuel. So I'm confused as to exactly what GB Energy is and what it can actually achieve.
So I don't think it's really for me to answer what GB Energy is. I think that's more a Hamish question. However, I take some of Hamish's points on board, but I do still have my own concerns. As I've said, I've been very clear about what I back in terms of our energy within the UK. I believe in the energy that we are utilising just now. I do think that we have to move to more greener energy, and that should be done by a just transition.
Thank you, everybody. The gentleman in the middle there with the blue top on, I saw you next. I think this may have to be our last question, so that you can keep it really tight.
Well, this is a bit influenced by my travel here on a 35-mile single track road, and I know that the EPSA is a reserve matter. I just wondered whether the candidates might suggest that adding a section to the practical driving test to be carried out on single track roads might be a good thing to do. In particular, to be able to reverse 10 metres. That's the massive thing that's just gone past. But the other thing is that this would reduce the stress levels of people living here. And we could actually create lots of employment by doing the tests here. And we could also think about the mitigation of having crash repair centres for those that own cars. So it could be a win-win-win. I'd just like to, it's a serious question.
That's a great question.
Would you ask the DVSA to put that extra piece into the driving test?
You gave all the wins, but I can just imagine the uproar when somebody receives a text saying your driving test is cancelled because the ferry's off. Well, it's a serious point, Sandy, and I think there should, where it could be put, and I certainly will pursue this, is in the theory part of the driving test. There certainly should be an emphasis on the correct way to drive in single track roads. And I would like to see a publicity campaign, because you're right, it's frustrating. I know going to Iona, and it can be quite stressful if you end up with somebody in front of you that doesn't understand the culture of how to drive in a single track road properly. So I would certainly support a publicity campaign and in the theory part of the test.
That's a brilliant question. It is. And we all had a good laugh, but we all had a good laugh because we all recognise it. Every single one of us has been in that position. And it's about road etiquette, that particularly now, I know driving up here today, the passengers in my car were probably white knuckled at some point with the frustration. Camper vans, doing 30 miles an hour with occasionally a hand coming out the window to point at a castle. It's incredibly frustrating, but frustration leads to dangerous situations. And I think that Alan's right, that there's a very good argument to be had for the theory side to get people to understand the etiquette of how to drive, not just on single track roads, but on country roads generally, because we're not part of their Disney experience. We live and work here. We've got to go and pick up the kids from school. We've got to go and catch a ferry. We've got to go get to the supermarket. So let's get them, understanding that things are not just around for the holiday makers, that we live and work here and have places to go and people to see.
So I can't say I've ever experienced that in Iona, because you're only allowed cars in Iona if you're resident to Iona. You're not allowed general public cars in Iona. I have, however, experienced it in many other places, Mull as one of them. Fun fact, past life I trained as a driving instructor, so yes, I absolutely see where you're coming from, and I think that the idea of it being included within a theory test is very beneficial and very sensible. In fact, just over the past week, it's something that I've been discussing at Community Council, both in Mull and also in Tyree, where you have these issues that occur. With educating people on single track roads, you have community councils who are vastly struggling to try to come up with idea after idea to find something that's actually going to work. Your answer is actually a very, very good answer. Right now what I have is some examples of signage that can go up through the local areas that's about to be sent on to the community councils this evening that I'd sourced for them. But I must say, your own idea is much easier and I absolutely back it.
Yeah, so I heard a range of ideas, from signs to adverts on ferries and announcements on ferries before they dock. I think your idea is a really good one. I've experienced the frustration, and lots of people have reached out to me. I've expressed that on their list of frustrations. So yes, I certainly would explore that and consider that a sensible solution.
Thank you. I tell you what, let's do one very quick one from this side. I thought I saw a hand at one point. Was there somebody else with a question?
I want to say something, John.
Okay.
Sorry, I know I already had the talking stick. What I would say is on behalf of the LGBT community, so referring back to the question we had previously, it was perfectly clear that Brendan has a complete understanding and empathy for that community. I have to say that on their behalf, you all need to understand that when someone is gay, they do not make a decision to be gay, they are gay. Yes. When somebody wishes to be a man as opposed to a woman, or a woman as opposed to a man, it's not because they make a decision to be the opposite sex, it's because they feel they are. And you people need to understand that.
Yeah, thank you for showing that important point. I don't want to be misunderstood that I disagree with you.
You were, Hamish, completely misunderstood, as was Amanda.
No, so just to be very, very clear, I mean, some of my very, very best friends in all the world are gay, and I have had so much joy at their weddings, recognising that our society has come a long way on this issue. I absolutely recognise
that. In that case,
yeah.
When you refer to this subject, you make it perfectly clear that you do understand. Thank you.
Okay, and hopefully that point has come across. Thank you.
Like Hamish, I'm quite confused as to your statement. I think I had made myself quite clear when I had said that I have nothing against people who are gay. I have nothing against people who are genuinely trans. I have a concern for people who are utilising that to their own benefit.
Okay, come on.
So I have
your statement was, as far as I'm concerned, a man's a man and a woman's a woman.
Yes, that's my belief.
Thank you. Is that what you said?
Yes, that's biological science.
Thank you. I have nothing further to add.
Do you want to say anything?
I'm not quite sure I understand the criticism. I mean, the question was about trans, not sexual orientation. As far as I'm concerned, there should be no discrimination whatsoever on grounds of sexual orientation, and there's a difference between sexual orientation and trans. I mean, it's not. It is a different. It is different.
Oh, and I refer to both.
Yeah, well, there should be no discrimination whatsoever.
Thank you. That's good.
John, I want to end on the question, what's wrong with taxing the rich? Because
Well, we're out of time already. Brendan, do you want to say something?
I'll say something about taxing the rich.
Right, go on then, very quickly.
No,
30
it's fine,
seconds.
honestly, I know we're running out of time.
30 seconds and then we'll sum up.
Taxing the rich, yeah, great idea. I saw the Labour's new billionaire when he said in his interview with the BBC 2 nights ago, he said that the reason he was supporting Labour is because they no longer believe in taxing the rich to help the poor, because then the rich would all go to Monaco. And I nearly fell off my chair, and I rewound it, and I actually wrote it down word for word. So let's tax the rich, because they've got away scot-free for decades in this country on the backs of the poor.
I personally am more concerned about the people in Scotland who are paying more tax than what they do in England. Those people are teachers, they are our doctors, they are our nurses, they are our core staff. Stop taxing the people on lower bands more than what they are in England.
Far more
Yeah, it's no secret that the SNP's policy on taxation is not delivering according to 3/4 of the country who are asked. 70% of people asked if they get any value for money for higher taxes in Scotland, and their answer was no. And the answer to the should there be a greater tax burden on the wealthy? Yes. Labour has not made any secret of its existence in the name of that cause. And again, if I could refer you to the back of our manifesto, which sets out where revenue in the first instance is going to come from, includes non-dom tax loopholes, which, just in case you aren't aware, is a rich person's method of avoiding tax through this loophole by claiming non-dom status. That is absolutely what that is targeted at. And the chance for that to raise over £5 billion to spend on public services, I think, is a good one.
Yes, tax the rich, but you have to be smart about the way you go about it so that they don't avoid it. And we would give more resources to HMRC to clamp down on tax evasion, which is illegal, and also to do away with a lot of the legal tax avoidance schemes. We would also reform capital gains tax so that we get much more from the rich. I also referred earlier how we would be taxing the big companies like banks and social media giants. Yeah, that's the way to go about it. Yes, tax the rich, but do it in such a way that we actually get the money out of them.
Okay, thank you. I'm afraid we're out of time. We're over time.
The last one. One more.
Yeah, go on then.
The Tories have said no. Labour insist that they're going to say no. Is democracy being denied? Are we going to go down the road of civil unrest, which has tortured Ireland for generations?
Brendan, it's going to have to be very quick.
Simply no, we will not be going down the road of Ireland with civil unrest. I think that any suggestion we quash right now. But I think to your wider point about democracy, democracy has to be seen to work. If people want to have faith in the democratic process, then people have to get what they voted for. And if a parliament says that they want A, then that parliament should be able to enact A and not have another parliament say, no, you're not.
Okay.
So as it stands, we had a once in a generation vote, and I think the results of that were quite clear. I think that we have to move forward with on positive priorities and look after local people, local places, their priorities, and do that within the union, which was the democratic voting result.
Yeah, and Brexit, thanks for that as well.
What happened to the vow?
There are some things that Brendan and I will disagree on, some things we'll be very much on the same page on, and I absolutely echo his stance against the idea of civil unrest as a means to political end. Quite right, the pain and suffering of Northern Ireland and the years and years of death and misery, no.
So do we.
Absolutely
but to stop that and allow a referendum.
Question.
You're
So let me first of all echo Brendan's view of that. That's really, really important. Second of all, I am not against the long-term idea of another referendum at a point where there is a clear majority in favour of asking that question. There is not, at present, a clear and substantial settled view in Scotland that that is what the people of Scotland want. And as a result, there is a list of really, really important things that we have to get on with the economy and with public services. If at some point in the future there is a clear and settled will, then I would not stand against that when I see that evidence.
It's a majority right now. We'd like to be proportionally represented.
Hang on, folks.
Well, we'll find out in a fortnight what the result of the election is. I think you'll find that those parties who want another referendum will be a long, long way short of 50%. We had a referendum in 2014. It was won by Better Together by a significant majority. In the Edinburgh Agreement, Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon signed a bit of paper saying they would accept the result. They accepted the result, and a few minutes later were campaigning for another one, another referendum. We can't afford to spend all our time holding referendum after referendum after referendum. Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon said once a generation. A generation these days is about 30 years. So I think that round about 2044, if there is a demand from the Scottish people for another referendum, then it should happen.
Okay, everybody, we're way over time now, so I'll just ask the candidates to give their 1 minute summing up, and if you could stick to your time, please. We're a bit mixed up with the order, but Alan, it was you that should have been made.
On the 4th of July, you have the chance to vote for change. We've got a Tory government at Westminster that's clearly failed, an SNP government at Holyrood that's clearly failed. The state of the NHS and the Ferries is just one example. Electing a new Labour government will not make the slightest difference. I was at Westminster during the Blair-Brown years, and we saw no radical change. Vote for the Liberal Democrats for radical change. A change that we will make net zero by 2045, whereas the SNP and Tory governments are failing. Change, taxing the big companies to make our NHS effective. And change in the Constitution, get rid of the House of Lords and bring in proportional representation. That means no more right-wing Tory governments elected on a minority of the vote. If you vote for Labour, all that you'll see will be a short Labour government, then sadly the Tories will be back again. That's not the way to run the country. We need real change, proportional representation. We have it for Scottish Parliament, we have it for councils, let's have it for Westminster as well.
I'm standing again on my record, and I want to be judged on that record. I have championed Argyll and Bute at Westminster since 2015, and I have fought with the Scottish Government and Scottish Ministers and Scottish Departments since 2015 as well, whether that be on ferries, whether that be on, I think, their timidity towards fixed links and tunnels. And I don't do it publicly very often, but when I do it publicly, it's when I think they've gone too far. And I think what's not come up tonight is HPMAs. But I put out 11,000 letters in direct opposition to a Scottish Government policy, and we won. People power won that. So I am first and foremost and always your representative. And I think within that we share values. And if we share those values, we don't need to agree on every dot or comma. But what we can agree on is that Argyll and Bute and South Lochaber needs a champion, and it needs someone that they can trust, and someone that they can rely on, and someone who will put them first. And I think I've done that. And if you think I've done that, then I would ask you to reaffirm that by voting for the SNP on July the 4th.
Yes.
So, in my closing statement, firstly, I would like to thank the organisers for the work that's going into holding this event to begin with, and also the audience for coming along this evening and giving us the opportunity to speak to you all. Additionally to my fellow candidates as well, for a respectful debate. I think it's very important that we do have robust debates. We do disagree on things, and there are some things that we agree on. But I do appreciate a respectful and robust debate between us all. As I've said, I feel to benefit this constituency, we need to refocus priorities onto local people, local issues, local action. And I believe that I'm the best candidate to take that forward. So for me, it's a case of let's move forward in a positive way so that we are creating a more prosperous area for us all by, on the 4th of July, voting Scottish Conservative and Unionists. Amanda Hampsey, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me and for putting on a great event and for the amazing cakes and tea, so thank you very much. Like so many other people, I do feel really let down by our governments in Westminster and in Holyrood, and I hope I've made it clear. I don't think that's the fault of my fellow candidates who I admire and am enjoying this experience with, but I do feel really let down, and lots of other people do too. I want everyone to have the opportunity for a better future, and that means I want a stronger set of public services, certainly stronger than what we've got now. And I want that to be supported by a stronger and growing economy, certainly stronger than the one we have now. If anyone's undecided in their vote, I would say also that support for the Conservatives and the SNP has been crashing. That is not a big secret. A vote for Scottish Labour means you can send more than just a message that you want change. You can send a government. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much to all the candidates. Made a big commitment coming here tonight, finding accommodation at this time of year. Thanks to you all for coming, and thanks to the ladies at the back there for doing tea. I notice they're still there.